This question comes from CTI 1111. The question here is, if guardrails trigger a spending cut, how long does recovery take? And is a static 5% rule simpler or safer? A static 5% rule is not simpler or, well, it is simpler. It's not necessarily safer. Static rules are always simpler, right? The reason it's simpler is because you don't have to do math. You don't have to do calculation. It doesn't, quote unquote, require behavior change, which is not entirely true. One of the problems with static illustrations is that they ignore the fact that we do change our behaviors no matter what we think. Like, we will change the behavior regardless if we think we won't early on in retirement. Every one of us has a threshold at which our portfolio would go down a sufficient amount and we would change our spending, no matter whether the software tells us we should or shouldn't. We don't always know what that threshold is, but it's impossible to assume. I would say it's irresponsible to assume that we would never change our behaviors. That's one of the reasons I don't like static rules, because they just ignore human reality. And so therefore, I don't believe they are safe to rely on. Your other question here, which is if a guardrail triggers a spending cut, how long does recovery take, is a much more personal question. It actually totally depends on how markets perform, how your spending adjusts, how you adjust your spending, whether you're compliant with the adjustment rule, but also your portfolio composition. If you go making chop suey, fruit ninja portfolio changes through retirement as things are happening, it's going to be very hard to predict what your actual timeline to a recovery would be. It becomes more predictable. It's not entirely predictable. There's no way to guarantee it. There's no way to fully predict it, but you can have a higher probability of being correct if you don't make chop suey level portfolio adjustments. I'm going to give a tease here because this is a longer conversation, but there's a concept called market participation, which I did not get the chance to explore today, but I will promise to do in a future one of these lives that I think is going to connect that dot. But basically, we would want to use a concept like market participation that can give us some indication. It's not a predictor, but it is some indication directionally of how long it would take to recover and trigger the upper guardrail. So I personally think that is the right approach to retirement because, again, it gives us a not perfectly predictive, but a reasonable predictive layer. It allows us to make our retirement plans rely on our behaviors rather than things that are outside our locus of control, and ultimately reduces anxiety in retirement. Because really, I think, and I'm going to do a detour here, but I think there's one primary thing that blows up retirements. And it is almost always a consequence of anxiety. And that is making changes that we don't understand the consequence of. Because often what we do is we make changes that have a very large magnitude. They're bigger than they need to be. And they also therefore have downstream consequences that are much more larger than we expect. And they're not predictable. The best way to eliminate the primary mechanism that destroys retirements, which is sudden changes that we don't understand the consequences of, is to reduce anxiety, because these changes are born of anxiety. So what we do, my belief, is you attack the root cause, not the symptom. The symptom is the change. The root cause is the anxiety, right? So if I go to you and say, I'm going to help you tweak your changes, I'm just changing the symptom. But if I go to you and say, hey, let's reduce your anxiety, and so that therefore your odds of making a sudden knee-jerk, pull the emergency, parachute, and eject, if I can reduce that likelihood, I've actually done a great service to your retirement. Anybody has, right? I'm not saying as an advisor, I'm just saying as a person. So hopefully that made sense. That was a bit of a detour, but it was a great question and a good opportunity to explain some of the behavior psychology, I think, that undergirds retirement planning. Real quick, let me show you the exact 3-pillar comprehensive retirement roadmap that takes retirees from uncertainty to peace of mind that less than 1% of retirees actually have in place. Now, I've built hundreds of these for retirees, and I can say with a high degree of confidence that these are the 3 pillars every retiree needs to have in place in order to have full confidence that they're not missing anything in their retirement plan. And I broke each of these down by the specific questions. You can see them here that each needs to be answered and the best way to answer them. Now, we've done this across pre-retirees, recent retirees, married couples, single retirees, $1 million portfolios, $10 million portfolios, all the above, and it works. And it's my gift to you today. It's absolutely free. It's in the first link in the description below this video. It's going to say free comprehensive retirement roadmap training. Just click the link, enter your info, and you'll get instant access, all for free.